What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. It's Monday, February 6, 2017. And boy, the hackers have taken my server down. They always do it just before the show begins to try and cause the maximum damage. And it does signal something important is about to happen. And I'm not the only person under attack. Rents is under attack. Investment Watch Blog, their server got destroyed. They're having to rebuild it from scratch. So don't you just love how these liberal, whining, crybaby baby snowflakes, they don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in America. They don't believe in any of that. They just want what they want, and any way that they can get it is considered acceptable behavior. And then they wonder why conservatives want to have guns. All righty, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room ready to answer the phone and put you on the air here. And let's see. Now then, obviously yesterday, Super Bowl 51. Everybody was having a really, really good time. Going into the fourth quarter, the Falcons were leading by 19 points, 28-3. And in the fourth quarter plus overtime, the Patriots pulled ahead to win the game 34-28. I haven't seen anybody blow a lead that badly since Hillary's campaign. And it's amazing. A lot of the liberals were seeing this as kind of a symbolic referendum on Donald Trump's victory. Bill Maher was out there cheering for the Patriots because the owner and the coach and the star quarterback are all supporters of Donald Trump. And so he was going to just relish the defeat. He was saying, I want them to lose by zillions and zillions and zillions. Wrong again, Bill. Didn't work out. Listen, Bill, if you're still upset about all that liberalism stuff, you need to get a protest sign and get on down there and say, how dare the NFL build stadium walls just to keep out fans that haven't paid for a ticket. I mean, that's just racist right there. That is just absolutely racist for them to do that. Everybody has a natural right to go in and watch the Super Bowl without paying for a ticket. Don't you people understand that? It is rather absurd here. Now then, Milo Yiannopoulos is going to return to Berkeley to give his speech. They've rescheduled it. And now they're starting to dig in. Who was actually supporting all of this? We now know from the police, from the Berkeley, the UC regents, that the people causing the riot were not actually Berkeley students. They came in from outside. And as it turns out, one of the groups backing them, I mean, first of all, Berkeley's Robert Reich came on out and said on CNN, the organizers of the riot were mostly Milo himself and Breitbart News just to make the liberals look bad. And, of course, that absolutely did not work. But it turns out this Global Alliance for Justice picked up most of the tab on the Berkeley riots, and they get most of their money from George Soros through the Tides Foundation. So this is Soros doing his stuff again. He's trying to start a color revolution in this country. Now, the UC Berkeley chancellor is saying these rioters were armed individuals. They had ninja-like uniforms. They were using paramilitary tactics. They were paid disruptors. They were not students. They're not ordinary citizens protesting. They are paid disruptors. Now, apparently this group is known as Antifa, which stands for Anti-Fascist Action. And they're a bunch of anarchist thugs, and they were not just at Berkeley. They've been all over Europe. Everywhere there's a government being overthrown, these people are showing up. So they really are trying to start a color revolution in this country, and it is going to fail miserably because everybody knows that's what they're trying to do. And again, if you're trying to bring down a government and replace it, you cannot do it without popular support. You have to have the sympathy and trust and faith of the general population. And these people behaving the way they are, they're not going to get it. This is going to be as bad a failure as Iran in 2009. Now, there's another article out here on Zero Hedge. Is Soros the source of the funds behind the Muslim ban lawsuits? As you know, all these people are going to court to try and block Donald Trump's travel restrictions. And again, I just hate how everybody has fallen into this idea that this is a Muslim ban. No, it isn't. It's a ban on specific countries. Muslims from other countries are free to come and go as they will. Christians, Jews, atheists, Pastafarians in those countries are going to have just as much trouble coming across the border as the Muslims. It is not a Muslim ban. Please stop supporting that particular piece of propaganda, because it isn't. And remember, under the Immigration Act, 65-year-old Immigration Act, the President has the authority to designate certain groups of people as not allowed into the country. It is all these judges that are in violation of the law. If this goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court's going to say, look, the law is the law. The President has this authority. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, there's a really cool video that's out there up in Portland, Oregon, where these protesters and troublemakers are out there and they're blocking traffic and they're causing damage and all of this upset. And the police just get line ahead and just plow right into them. It looked like another just right out of the Super Bowl itself, you know, hike, boom, and just knock them on down. The crowd cheers wildly. They love it. They are sick to death of all these crybaby paid agitators causing trouble. They want them to go away. Now then, Paul Craig Roberts is out there with an article that is echoing a concern I had last week about all this war rhetoric that we're getting out of the administration. And it is indeed very, very troubling. And the point I made is it's alarming, but there may be a couple of other things going on here we should keep in mind. One is that Trump is still trying to get his nominees confirmed by the Senate, and the nominees, and Trump may just be saying what they know those senators want to hear, especially McCain and Graham, who never met a war they did not like. And so how Trump behaves once the confirmation process is over will be very, very telling. Secondly, if you want to understand Donald Trump, you need to read his book, The Art of the Deal. Because in there he says his primary negotiating tactic is to open with something so over the top and way, way, way past what he really wants. And then he lets the other side negotiate step by step back to what it is Trump originally wanted in the first place. Now, it worked very well for him in business, and there's no reason for him not to use that same approach as president. Now, of course, for a professional politician, anytime you step back, it's a loss of face. And we're seeing all these criticisms about, oh, Trump, he's already flip-flopping. He says one thing and does another. But again, that's not a failure. That is his strategy. You need to read that book, The Art of the Deal, and you'll learn a lot about how he thinks. But Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying that so far, Trump is coming on in looking, sadly, for the most part, like more of the same, and that's not what's needed. Paul Craig Roberts is saying the Trump administration needs to present a different Washington, D.C. to the world, and I would add to the American people as well. Now, he has made a lot of changes, but they're not in the areas that really impact our lives, like the economy and the wars. And still we're seeing all these liberal media establishments out there openly talking about assassination. Over in Ireland, Village magazine had a cover saying, why not assassinate Donald Trump? And they had his picture with the crosshairs on it. And they're, I guess, trying to one-up Der Spiegel, where they had Trump beheading the Statue of Liberty. Now, Nancy Pelosi is asking the FBI to find out what the Russians have on Donald Trump. She doesn't want to let go of that dossier about the prostitutes and everything, even though it's now been completely discredited. I think it would be more profitable to find out what George Soros has on Nancy Pelosi, because we know that a lot of our so-called leaders are, in fact, receiving money from George Soros. Now, three people, Diane Blumstein, Nancy Goodman, and Donna Sodtaler-Toman, are bringing a case before the Supreme Court on the possible Russian hacking. It's now in the hands of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it's up to her to recommend whether it should go to the full court or not. At this point, regardless of Ginsburg's own politics, if she moves forward with a case that has no merits before the full panel, that's going to be very embarrassing for her. Of course, they can't fire her. She's got the job for life. But they're still out there trying to push this Russian hacking, Russian tinkering with our elections. And meanwhile, you've got Israel's tinkering with our politics decade after decade after decade. You've got George Soros openly buying and selling members of Congress. And nobody seems to think that's a big deal. It's only when it's Russia that it's going to be a big problem. By the way, do you remember in the last weeks of his administration, President Barack Obama commuted the sentences of hundreds of drug dealers? Just set them out on the streets again. Didn't touch Leonard Peltier, didn't touch Mumia Al-Jabbar. Left them in there for crimes that it looks like they didn't actually commit. But the drug dealers all got to walk. One of them has already been thrown back in jail for going right back to dealing drugs on the streets. Way to go, Barack Obama. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Sal Jr. in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I have a suggestion for all these protesters who want these immigrants to come in. Force them to take these people into their homes.
I agree.
And see how they like it.
I agree, absolutely.
And they start beating up on their wives and the women. I think they'll turn against having these people come in.
Well, yeah, I mean, somebody sent me this rather amusing letter about where somebody had written into the Department of Homeland Security about, we have to let these people in. And they wrote back saying, well, we've got one here we're going to put up at your house. And, of course, it was this very, very disreputable person. It really is rather crazy.
Yes. That's what I have to say.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Now, we all know Donald Trump has set up this Commission for Vaccine Safety. There we are. Set up this Commission for Vaccine Safety, headed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's an idea whose time has come. He is now setting up another commission to look at the issue of election fraud, and Mike Pence is going to head that one up. Boy, if there was ever any place in the Trump administration I would want a job, that is it right there. I would love to be part of that little entity, that organization, if you will. Now then, apparently over in New York, somebody vandalized a subway car, painting it with swastikas and Jews belong in the oven, classic hate crime hoax, and I want you to hold that in mind because I think there's a reason why it's happening. And we'll get into that. But just remember that there was this hate crime hoax in New York to build sympathy for poor little Israel. Now then, a lot of people are talking about this ballistic missile that was launched from Yemen and struck Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And the corporate media is out there saying, oh, how could Yemen do this? What a terrible thing. Well, Saudi Arabia has been bombing Yemen for months now. You expect them to just sit there and take it? And, of course, the inevitable spin, well, this had to be Iran. Iran had to do this. Iran was part of it. It has to be part of Iran. The missile used is called a Borkan 1. And it's domestically produced in Yemen. Iran has nothing to do with it. And apparently the corporate media and the government are still living by that old adage, if at first you don't succeed, lie again. And have you noticed that now that Donald Trump is in office, all of a sudden the corporate media is so concerned with the U.S. military killing civilians? Oh, they got that poor little 8-year-old girl over there in Yemen. And yes, it was a tragedy. But when it was Obama in there, they could care less. And the numbers are in for last year. up in Afghanistan, there was a record number of civilian casualties last year. And the United Nations has been keeping track since 2009. Last year was a record. Have you seen that on the corporate media anywhere? No, because civilian casualties are okay when we have a liberal Democrat as the president. But when it's a conservative Republican, we're going to hold his feet to the fire. Now, speaking of that airstrike into Yemen, and first of all, you need to remember that strike had actually been planned by the Obama administration. And Donald Trump authorized it to proceed. Somebody apparently leaked it because the enemy knew it was coming, trying to set Trump up for his first embarrassment. And he should have probably done a little more due diligence on this before he went along with it. And the U.S. military came on out with a press release about what a great strike it was, and they got busted because the video they tried to pass off as from last week's successful airstrike on Yemen is actually 10 years old. It's already all over the internet. People were writing it and saying, "You're lying to us yet again." And Pentagon spokesman Navy Captain Jeff Davis said, "You got us. Yeah, it is old. We're just going to take it down off the website, and if you're a patriot, you'll forget that you caught us lying to you again." It is rather ridiculous. Another alarming development here. The United States has sent the USS Cole destroyer into the Red Sea. And the reason this is significant is because the USS Cole has already been used once in a false flag attack that severely damaged it. And yes, it can float again, but it's already weak. The hull is weak. And it raises the possibility, is the U.S. willing to sacrifice that ship to somehow get their war with Iran going? And before you say pish and tosh, remember how easily Franklin Roosevelt wrote off the ships in Pearl Harbor and all those men to get us into war with Japan. Now, the deputy commander of the Donetsk People's Republic, Edward Basurin, has stated in an emergency briefing in Donetsk, Poroshenko is going to walk away from the Minsk agreements. He's preparing for all-out invasion of the eastern Ukrainian republics because Poroshenko's job is to provoke a war with Russia. That's why he was put into power. That's what his job is supposed to be. And to heck what happens to those poor Ukrainian people. So, if Trump was serious about pulling back from the war agenda, he'd better start doing it right now, because all the war hawks are out there pushing as hard as they can to gin up a war by hook or by crook or by false flag. Who knows what's going to go on? Now, there's an article that came out of Blacklisted News about how it's very obvious the neocons are trying to sabotage that Minsk agreement. And they're trying to manufacture a war that Trump is just going to have to say, all right, I guess we got to go along with this. And that would be a disaster. Because one more time, the U.S. is militarily exhausted from 14 years of war. Our weapons are hideously expensive, bloated pieces of junk. Our stockpiles are all drawn down. Nobody's enthusiastic about war out here in the general population. We're going to lose this one. Meanwhile, Russia has fired back at Great Britain, as Great Britain is demanding Russia give back Crimea, and Russia says, well, we'll consider it just as soon as you give back Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is demanding an apology from Fox News for calling Vladimir Putin a killer. And even Donald Trump said that really is rather ridiculous. You don't think we're killers? It's just utter chaos out there. Now then, we're going to take a break for commercials. When we come on back, I'm going to do the link back to that train with the swastikas on it, because I think something ugly is about to happen. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I'm even getting emails from people saying, yeah. Every time your show's about to start, the children attack your server, and yes, they do. And all it does is demonstrate that these are not Americans. They do not subscribe to the Bill of Rights. They have absolutely no respect for anybody's point of view except their own. And they are dangerous. They are brown shirts. They're liberalologists. Anyway, now then, getting on to the story. Israel is now claiming that somebody fired gunshots from the Gaza Strip towards Israeli soldiers. Nobody got hit. Can't even find a bullet. But Israel is now saying that. And together with that play for sympathy at the New York subway, I think Israel is about to uncork on those poor people of Gaza yet again. Because they do that every 2 to 3 years. They'll gin up some kind of a story, and they'll just go in and lay waste to the place again. Just to prove that they can do it. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu, in between dodging his corruption investigation, is urging Britain and the United States to confront Iran. You've got to confront Iran. They're bad people. You have to destroy them for us. And I mean, Netanyahu's like this cheerleader for war, second only to John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Needs to get himself a little cheerleader outfit and some pom-poms. Give me a W. Give me an A. Give me an R. It's amazing. Now, getting on back to this issue about who the killers really are. Story out of militarytimes.com, no less. The U.S. military's statistics on the deadly airstrikes in Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq are absolutely wrong. Thousands of these airstrikes have gone unreported, according to a Military Times investigation. There's huge gaps in the data, and it raises serious questions about the accuracy and transparency of reports to the American people about the success or failure of these various ventures. Now, there's another story that came out of Russia today, and it's talking. We've been talking about the deplorable condition of America's weaponry. They're now finally admitting the F-35 may never actually be usable in combat. Same thing with the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. The Zumwalt has drivetrain problems. The Independence-class littoral combat ships, corrosion. Freedom-class littoral combat ship, drivetrain problems. F-22 still asphyxiating its pilots, and on and on and on and on and on. And the United States is not alone in that. This story coming on out about British military defense capabilities. There was an investigation by the Sunday Times, and what they found out is the Royal Navy ships are so loud they can be heard 100 miles away. They're rattling, they're clanking. I mean, noise suppression is a key component of anti-submarine doctrine. And apparently they're having to whittle down these little wooden wedges to cram them into the hatches so the hatches don't clank back and forth. That's how poorly fit, what a poor fit they are in their little combing there. Apparently, the British drones are malfunctioning on a regular basis. Britain has been building armored vehicles that are actually just a little bit too large to fit into the transport aircraft supposed to carry them. Because in Great Britain, like the United States, it's all about grabbing money. And they don't care if the stuff really works or not. Meanwhile, China has unveiled another ballistic missile, this one capable of targeting Taiwan and U.S. bases in Asia. Now, 2 weeks ago, China unveiled a new ICBM system, supposedly in response to Trump's provocative remarks. China then denied the report, but then they turned around and they've revealed details about this other, somewhat shorter range ballistic missile. It can hit Taiwan, the South China Sea Islands, and U.S. and Japanese bases all over Asia. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And let's look at the economic news for a little bit here. Apparently, the Rothschild banks are now under criminal investigation regarding a missing $4 billion as part of a global corruption probe. And apparently they got caught doing something nefarious involving the Malaysian development Berhad. Deutsche Bank has been fined $10 billion for sham Russian trading, or trades actually. And Deutsche Bank has agreed to pay $630 million in fines for organizing this $10 billion in sham trades that could have been used to launder money coming out of Russia. Now, there's a very alarming sign out there, and again, I don't know that Trump's going to be able to stop the economic troubles that are about to hit. But apparently, corporate bankruptcies are starting to really skyrocket the way personal bankruptcies did leading into this disaster of 2008. Commercial bankruptcies have been rising year over year since late 2015. The other problem we have out there is the pension tsunami. This is also something that came on out of that 2008 mortgage-backed security meltdown, and all of these pensions invested in those mortgage bundles because they were rated AAA, and that made it legal. And the fraud collapsed, and all these pensions lost money, and nobody has the gonadal tissue to stand up and say, hey, Wall Street did this to us, let's recover our money from them. So they point fingers at their own customers and say, oh, you're living too long, you're demanding too much. And CalPERS is the latest pension to lobby the government, in this case of California, to forcibly confiscate and liquidate 401ks, throw that money into the pension funds, and then bring those 401k holders into the pension plan. But all without changing the management that broke the system in the first place. Now, down in Arizona, they have, one of their committees just passed a bill that will support sound money. And this bill would eliminate state capital gains taxes on gold and silver specie and encourage its use as a currency, a parallel system to the Federal Reserve's ink and paper. They're literally, if this bill passes, citizens of Arizona will be carrying gold and silver coins or claim checks for the same to conduct commerce, which will not be accruing interest to the Federal Reserve. That's a major, major blow. Italy is looking more and more like they're going to abandon the euro. And over in Greece, they're now suggesting that they need to set up a parallel system, which is basically what Arizona is getting ready to do. Have a second parallel economic system in place in case the euro collapses, which is looking more and more likely here. Now, Germany's default risk has spiked to the highest level since the Brexit vote. Meanwhile, Angela Merkel's standing in the polls has plunged to a multi-year low. I think the two are connected. It's that old 11th marble. You cannot get away from it. If you are foolish enough to be enslaved to a private central bank that issues all the public currency as a loan at interest, you will be their debt slaves. That's what it's designed to do. Let's take a phone call here. James in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Appreciate you taking my call. I'm going to try and hit on a couple of things here. A few minutes ago, you mentioned the how we're now starting to hear about the civilians that are getting killed in attacks. This last one was in Yemen, which when did we get into Yemen? We weren't in Yemen, back well, I don't know, a few years ago.
Technically, you're correct, but Saudi Arabia is in Yemen as a U.S. proxy, because what happened is the U.S. went in, they overthrew the legitimate elected government of Yemen, they installed a puppet regime, which was justified by saying this is the internationally approved government, as if the rest of the world has any right to go into a country and say, this is the government you're going to have. That's part of that whole globalism thing. Well, the people of Yemen didn't like being under foreign puppet rule, just like the people of Iraq don't like being under foreign puppet rule, just like the people of Libya don't like being under foreign puppet rule, just like the people of Afghanistan don't like being under foreign puppet rule, and just like the people of the United States do not like being under foreign puppet rule. So the people of Yemen, basically like the people of Iran in 1979, kicked out their U.S.-backed puppet regime and set up a new government for themselves. And so the U.S., which was already facing a backlash at home from the American people over all these wars, got their good friend Saudi Arabia to go on in and declare war against this upstart domestic government in order to reimpose the internationally approved puppet rulers on Yemen. And that's how we got into this mess. And Saudi Arabia has not been doing very well. And that's why Obama planned this boots on the ground, well, not really boots on the ground, but this strike to go on in and basically try and target the leaders of Yemen's own government. And it backfired horribly because the indications are somebody leaked that this attack was coming, and those Navy SEALs walked into a real trap.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first strike that I've heard about that we were directly involved in Yemen. It probably isn't, but it's the first one I've heard about.
Yes.
But the main point I was wanting to get at, I think Trump is very likely to get himself into a bad situation of having overpromised coming into the presidency, saying that he's going to wipe ISIS off the face of the earth, and with the anti-war left starting to reemerge after 8 years of silence, and we're hearing about everything that's going to go wrong. If anybody so much as gets a hangnail in one of these attacks, we're going to hear about it, and we're going to hear about any civilians that get killed. They may even start listing them by name, and he's going to be in a situation where he's either going to be accused of not fulfilling his promise, or on the one hand, or being a war criminal on the other.
Well, like I said, I mean, that's the whole point. The problem that Donald Trump has is nobody in the establishment wants him there. The media is out to just damage his reputation any way they can. They're openly lying about him, and every time they get caught with another lie, they say, all right, well, would you believe this? And they come out with another one. The military always want more war because it means more money. John McCain and Lindsey Graham apparently are supported in part by George Soros. They're pushing for these wars as well because Soros is still dreaming of his one world government.
Yeah. Well, how he's going to be able to revive the economy and stay out of trouble with trying to fight wars in several countries now is that's going to be an incredible balancing act.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else?
That's what I wanted. No, nothing now. No.
Okay. Well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, hi, Mike. Hey, I don't watch sports. I think it's bread and circuses. But if you go on YouTube, they got a lot of the commercials on there, and the only one I seem like that's always being played is the one where the U.S. troops are in Poland. I want to, it's like they're trying to get the American people ready for this European theater. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's no question about that.
And a lot of people should know this, that we've actually become very militaristic in terms of being propagandized. Well, you know that, but the Super Bowl especially, they merge patriotism with militarism. It's two different things, right?
Well, no, not really. If you think about football as actually symbolic warfare. And in fact, most athletic sports grew out of warfare. Look at the original Olympics. All the sports were basically stylized weaponry. The javelin is a spear. The shot put is basically throwing rocks at the other guy. The discus was actually a weapon of war. These are all military skills. It's only in the modern Olympics that they start to get sports in that don't have a direct antecedent in war.
Well, I just hope they never have no tow and javelin missile events. But on their previous caller about Trump being it's like an incredible balancing act, Trump still needs to really focus on clearing out the State Department and the CIA and elements of the Pentagon as fast as he could, Mike, because they're going to be throwing monkey wrenches in front of him, and they could start the war. If they see that he's gaining too much success, they'll throw him a monkey wrench in front of him.
Yeah, they already are. Again, the Pentagon loves war because it means more money, more toys, more promotion, more medals, and all the rest of it. And you're absolutely right. Donald Trump is dealing right now with bureaucratic inertia. In fact, he's even come on out and said that all these leaks coming out of his administration are coming out from the Obama holdovers, who are clearly still on board with whatever Obama wants to do. And Trump needs to basically scrape them all out and get some people in there that he can actually trust. And like I said, my major concern with Trump back during the campaign was he's coming into the political environment as dangerously naive about what it's really like as Jimmy Carter was. And Trump, comes out of a world where people keep their word, they keep their promises, and he's been plunged into a world where everybody is lying and playing dirty tricks. And he's got to play catch-up real fast.
And I just find it amazing how this whole globalist cult, no matter how many attacks some of these refugee extremists cause, they just still won't close the borders. They just still don't care. They don't care about helping the refugees. They don't care about you. They just want to bring them in for, like you said, to have this globalist, one world disorder, more like,
yes,
where everybody's blended in and you lose your cultural identity.
Well, right now, Soros' two big thorns in his side of his globalist dreams are the Brexit and Donald Trump. And I'm fully expecting they're still trying to find some way they can stop the Brexit from happening. And they're absolutely aligned against Donald Trump because he doesn't want to be part of a new world order, and neither does anybody else below the level of the bankers. We want to be left alone to live our lives as we see fit, to have an opportunity to trade our labor for decent wages and salaries so we can take care of our families, and that's all we really want. And we don't want to have government just peeking at everything that we're doing. We don't want our kids stolen from us to be killed and crippled in these wars of conquest, all over money and oil and whatever all else is out there. And this New World Order, it sounds wonderful for those who are sitting on that throne, but for everybody else it's going to be a raw deal. Look at Alexander the Great. I mean, this individual is lionized in our pop culture, in our history books, for having conquered this huge swath of the planet, most of what was at his time the known world. But the problem is, underneath that, all the people who were conquered and made war on, they all suffered horribly for Alexander's dreams of empire. And those who dream of empire, that's just part of the cost of doing business. We're going to have to, we're going to have to accept that maybe, 5-10 million people are going to die, but that's not too bad.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I'll take the answer off air. What's the difference between Marxism and communism? And I'll take the answer off here.
Oh, boy, that's a good one. It's communism is actually the implementation of Marxism, and it's kind of hard to say where one stops and the next one takes over, because unfortunately the Soviet Union made a mockery of the original Marxist vision, which was a truly classless society. But the Soviet Union's implementation of communism actually built the most powerful ruling class in history, sitting over a population that did not have a middle class at all. And they did that because it is from the middle class that opposition to oligarchy and tyranny will arise. And so the Soviet Union just said, we're going to design a system where there is no middle class, therefore nobody can ever oppose us. And it's one of the reasons the Soviet Union lasted as long as they did, despite all the really horrific mistakes they made. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Philip in Virginia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, couple things. First off, I'd like to really see get on that commission there for the election reform, and see if they could, if not incorporate you, someone like Bev Harris.
Absolutely. When I sent my paper letter to the White House on this very issue, I pointed them at Bev Harris's website and the HBO documentary, and then I sent along a copy of my article on how you can have honest, transparent elections in this country. And I've been really surprised ever since I put that out there, all the email I'm getting from all these other countries saying, yeah, we're doing that. We got rid of those electronic machines years ago, and we're doing it pretty much the way that you've set up.
Yeah. All right. Well, also, I've been noticing a couple of interesting parallels here with the election of, or the ascendance of Donald J. Trump. And with regards to this culture war, the current religious war that's going on, his comment about eradicating, the statement he made about the eradication of the militant Islam. One of the things that Sovereign Jehu did, one of his tasks was to, get rid of a certain class of people. But anyway, also some interesting parallels with Koresh, otherwise known as Cyrus, as well. But anyway, I called about the coal. Glad you brought that up here, because over here it's a big local issue, local story. I know that one of the...
All right, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Philip, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Here we're going to go back to Philip in Virginia, and you were talking about the USS Cole.
Yes, for those of you who might not know, it's been in the news lately. The coal has been assigned over there off the coast of Yemen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and some of the people in this country are so sick. One of the local talk show hosts was talking about, because they got a link to the coal here, this patriotic thread here that drives these people, the bloodthirsty, murderous warmongers that they are. He was proud of the fact that the coal was going to be over there off going back to Yemen, and they might, because he said he wanted the coal to get some. So tell us the backstory about the coal here, because I know that, if I'm not mistaken, they had a warning not to go there and do that refuel in there, and they ignored that, and next thing you know, they're getting blown up.
You're absolutely right. There was, in fact, the coal actually didn't normally go to that harbor, and they decided they were going to go there to refuel. There were warnings not to go. The official story is some of the people of Yemen sailed on out in a boat and blew a hole in the side of the USS Cole. The story, though, had some serious problems with it. They tried to imply that the coal was right up against the dock, and that's why nobody had a warning. But photos at the time showed the coal was actually well out into the middle of the harbor, which raises the question how anybody could approach it, if there was a watch detail on board the ship. And the speculation is that this is another false flag by Israel, like the USS Liberty, to try and trick the United States into making war on people Israel doesn't like.
Well, so in other words, business as usual.
Business as usual.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, that's a dirty little secret that they don't want to talk about. And the only thing worse than the bloodthirsty, murderous, warmongering national syndicated radio hosts are local ones.
Well, most of those local ones are owned by large corporations like Clear Channel, and Clear Channel sends the instructions down. You will push this agenda. And if you don't, then you will not have a job in much longer.
Yeah, they sure don't want to hear the what really happened.
No, they don't. That's why they're bashing on my server right now. Okay, well, Philip, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Sherry in Fredericksburg. We're probably going to have to take you through station identification. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, Philip just played right into what I wanted to talk about. Last Friday, and you started the show off with this too, I decided to listen to corporate radio and see what they're saying. This old station I used to listen to about 3 or 4 years ago, and we'd talk about GMOs and stuff and how things have changed there. Actually, not a lot has changed since they've gone under new contracts and everything. It's still Republicans versus Democrats. The Republicans are good. Democrats are, crazy, liberal this, liberal that. That's all the same. And they dismiss Trump now, and they don't go into him much because all they do is stress that Hillary won the popular vote.
Okay, well, Nick, Sherry, hang on there.
Yes.
I'm going to come right back to you after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And boy, do I hate being right all the time. Israel is now bombing Gaza. Oh, boy. All right. We're going to go back to Sherry. Please continue where you left off.
Okay. Well, these corporate radio talk show hosts are really weighing heavily on the fact that Hillary won the popular vote. And so they also mention over and over that the agitators are more like Southern liberals in disguise and all this sort of stuff. And when callers try to point out that these are paid insurgents or agitators, they pretty much see it coming and kind of cut them off or get them off onto another subject that's a personal. You're not telling me that you're one of the, or something to kind of to get them around it. And it's very sad. Now you hit on something that I think could help, and that is if and when Hillary supporters learn about the voting irregularities and the scope of the voter fraud, if liberals could hear the truth through their own source of information, because Mike, I have these friends, and after Donald Trump was elected, it was like, oh, Sherry, they're rioting all over the world. Everyone's in protest. I said, that's a woman's movement. No, and no, Sherry, it's everywhere. There's millions of people rising up against Trump. It was like, my God, unless they hear this through their own, what would you say, genre or something, the people the websites they're used to going on, or is this going to happen or not? Because all of those protesters, I can't get them to see that they're being disguised. They're
useful idiots, is what you're trying to say. Okay, first of all, let's back up here a little bit. Nobody knows if Hillary won the popular vote because right now current estimates are there were at least 25 million illegal votes for Hillary Clinton. The fact that we can't actually confirm who got what votes tells us there's a serious problem with our election system. Now, there's a phenomenon called the true believer, the fanatic. And as I was saying last year, Hillary ran her campaign as a personality cult, with herself as the personality, and people who are part of a cult, they literally cannot see any other view than the one they've been indoctrinated with. And that's true of the liberals, it's true of the Scientologists, it's true of any fanatical organization like that. And part of the message that has been going out through the liberals is this kind of behavior is acceptable because we didn't get what we wanted. And again, the problem is it looks like Soros is trying to start a color revolution in this country, and I don't see it as succeeding for the same reason the attempt at a color revolution in Iran in 2009 did not succeed. You cannot change the government of a country without the popular support of the general population. They don't have it, and they're not going to get it behaving like this. And all this corporate media that's out there attacking Donald Trump, we all know it's all bought and paid for. It's an orchestrated campaign. And at some point, though, they could start a civil war. And before they do that, though, I hope the liberals will sit down and remember who it is who owns and knows how to use firearms and who does not.
Well, I'm hoping some corporate people will come forward and start making little noises about what the real truth really is. And I don't understand why they can't sue for fraudulent votes. How these states that have gone into their voter boxes and seen, okay, this many people voted, but we have this many votes that don't match up with the number of people that voted. We have so many more votes, that are for Hillary that shouldn't, because they can't prove who they're for.
Well, there may be lawsuits, but you need to remember the lesson that we learned back during Jill Stein's recount. When election fraud did surface, all of it favoring Hillary Clinton, the corporate media would not report it.
I know.
And that's basically, the corporate media is a big part of the problem, and they see themselves as literally in a fight for their survival, because if they have lost control of the minds of America, then the big paychecks go away. And that's why last week we saw this very laughable situation where for the last month we've been hearing about fake news and the independent media, and they're all the problem, and they're the reason Hillary lost. And then last week they came out and said, the independent media really didn't play that big a role. Everybody was still coming to the corporate media. We're still in charge. And they don't seem to realize when they flip-flop like that, everybody says, okay, there's obviously something not connected here.
Yes. I think they are shooting themselves in the foot when they do these things, and I'm hoping that will grow somehow so it'll get more into mainstream. Someone will be brave enough to say, there's a lady on To the Contrary on PBS on Sunday around morning, around 10 or something, that is the one Trump person, and she has been really up against these other gals and doing a beautiful job. I think her last name's Stone. But anyway, I wanted to just ask another question real quick. On the Trump's briefing, that's right after he's nominated, right? He has a briefing.
Well,
and
once he's...
he came out looking a little, a little addled. I'm not addled, but he came out looking a little stunned.
Well, the problem with his briefing, whether it was as the nominee or now as president, is that briefing is being delivered to him by the CIA. And as John F. Kennedy learned the hard way, the CIA will lie to the president.
Yeah, I wonder if they give them this thing like, we have an offer you can't refuse, like in the form of a threat or something, because...
No, they don't need to do that.
They
don't need to do that.
Okay.
They just use on the president the same propaganda techniques they use on us. They give him only that information that would lead him to conclude of his own free will exactly what the information engineers want him to conclude.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Nick in Las Vegas. First of all, we're going to do a shout-out to our honor affiliates just now rejoining our network, and now we're going to go to Nick in Las Vegas. Nick, what's on your mind? Nick, are you there? Okay, I guess we lost Nick. Is Steve in Arizona there?
Yep.
Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, who is this I'm talking to?
I'm Steve.
You're Steve in Arizona. Okay, Steve, what's on your mind?
Yes. Well, I was thinking, for all the diehard Hillary supporters, couldn't we just get them a second-place trophy or something?
Give them all participation trophies.
Yeah.
Maybe we should let California secede, and we'll put all the liberals over there in California, and let them go their own way. Okay?
Okay.
All right. All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch back to Nick in Las Vegas. Nick, aloha. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, thank you for taking my call. Just a comment on Russia. You made a comment earlier of why everybody keeps wanting to go back and Russia's the villain and everything. It's pretty simple, at least in my opinion. They've got one of the lowest external debts in the world. They've got one of the strongest militaries. When the Western financial system continues to come unglued, and believe me, I believe it's going to, guess who's going to be on top?
Russia and China.
My money.
Yeah, Russia and China.
China, I think they got themselves internally buried in a little bit too much debt, right along with Japan. But Russia's the one that's clean. They went through their depression 20 years ago. They're out of it, and they're just sitting back. They don't have to do anything. They just sit back and watch us, do what we're doing.
Well,
anyway,
the key to that, of course, is that Vladimir Putin took direct control of Russia's central bank. Now, it's still owned by its private owners. But Trump went on in and said, we're going to run the Russia's economy for the benefit of the country and the people. We're going to manage the public currency as a public utility. And that's why Russia is doing as well as it is economically. And, of course, that day that he took the bank away from the control of the private central bankers is when Russia went from trusted friend and ally to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list.
Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength there, and I agree with you. As far as immigration, we got a Ponzi scheme going. If they don't immigrate the people, you can't have one worker supporting 3 retirees like myself. It just, the math doesn't work. They've got to get them from someplace. That's why I think they've got the borders wide open.
Well, there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that. We don't have enough jobs for the American people, let alone the immigrants and the refugees and the migrants coming on in. They're just weighing down the social system. California alone is spending $20 billion with a B every year just caring for this huge influx of people. What you're talking about, the U.S. economy is a Ponzi scheme. What you're suggesting would work if there was employment for these people, but there isn't. That's where the plan falls apart. I think the primary motive of trying to drive all these people over the borders is to erase those national borders so that George Soros can have his one world government.
Okay. With regards to Trump, I spent a career doing startup and turnarounds, like us, and I've heard a lot of people say that basically the U.S. government is too big for somebody like Trump to come in and do something about it. My experience, the bigger they are, the easier they are to turn around. You've got more resources to deal with. If you're small, you don't.
Yes.
Trump, he's only been in there 2 weeks. When I went into a $100 million a year corporation, it took me a month just to get the bank account balance, let alone what this poor guy's got to go through. He's doing, and in my opinion, he is doing fantastic so far.
Okay.
He will, in my opinion, at least this is the way I always heard it done like this, he will get in there and control the cash. First thing he's going to do is cut cash off to areas he wants and see who squawks. He's going to find out where the money's going and work it from there. As far as the people go, he's going to have to clean house. One startup and turnaround I went in on, or turnaround, I tried to retrain everybody, rehire everybody, and I had a boss that laughed at me. And basically just said, you need to get rid of them and start over, because you can't change the tire on a Mack truck going 50 miles an hour down the freeway. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
And I think he's heading that direction. I think we'll find out, but I'm very happy with what he's doing so far because we need it. Because I do not think there's anything he can do to keep the thing from collapsing. It's going to have to collapse sooner or later because, again, the math doesn't work.
I agree. And because of globalism, when it comes down, it's going to bring all these central banks down together at the same time, and we have to be ready to stand up and say, we're not going to do this again. No more private central banks in charge of our national currency. Arizona's got the right idea. North Dakota's got the right idea. And we need to have a banking system that works for the people, instead of all these predatory corporations who see the entire human race as nothing more than wealth and labor to be harvested from.
And I think there's 2 things he's going to come up here in the next, I would say within 6 months, that I'm waiting for. One, he's got to figure out some way to devalue the dollar, and what do you devalue the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency against? I think he's going to do it against gold, and I think all he's got to do is come out and say, hey, we're going to audit the U.S. gold reserves. I think that'll be his devaluation right there. Because as soon as word gets out, he's going to, because I don't think there's anything there. I think they leased it all out.
Yeah, they leased most of it out.
Gold, yeah, and the other, on the gold, and the other thing is just the debt. We've got to come up with a balanced budget. That takes the power away from the politicians. They can't spend the money to buy the votes if the budget's balanced, or at least a lot better than what it is.
Well, balancing the budget would be okay, but that doesn't erase the debt. The debt really is unpayable, and one of the reasons it's unpayable is because ever since the Federal Reserve was created, each succeeding Congress will pay the interest on the growing debt, but they've never once paid down on the principal. And that is really where it is. I think we're going to have to let the private central banks collapse. I think it would be the best option, and not let them start back up again and go back to a system with an interest-free public currency managed as a public utility, because that's what worked for the young United States. It's worked for every nation that's tried it. The only reason we don't have that system is the private central bankers go to bed at night dreaming of holding the entire world's population as their debt slaves.
Don't disagree with you at all. The Federal Reserve, like I say, they're a leech.
They are, and they're not federal. They took the name to make it sound like they're part of the government, but they're no more federal than Federal Express. It's a privately owned bank that is set up to entrap the nation and its people in hopelessly unpayable debt. That's what all the private central banks do. That's what the private central bankers have done to the human race for the last 300 years. Enough is enough is enough is enough. Okay?
To end, I'll just make one comment. Like as Catherine Austin Fitts said a couple times, there's more than enough money coming into the federal government. It's what they're doing with it.
Agreed.
And they, like I say, and right now, I'll say, if they want to come in and cut Social Security, you're going to have 40 million boomers out there telling them, you cut the military budget and get out of these other countries before you start cutting my paycheck. And I don't think they're ready for that either. But anyway, I think they've got enough money. They just got to get it reorganized. But
yeah, they do. They got to remember the whole purpose of the government is to take care of the American people, not the whole world, not the corporations, but the American people. And it's very angering and frustrating to a lot of Americans to see these migrants and illegal immigrants getting a better deal from the U.S. government than legal citizens who've been supporting the system.
Agreed.
All right, well, thank you. We're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Tom in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Can you hear me?
I can hear. No, I'm not going to buy your condo. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. I think you were right when Trump was running for president there. You were concerned about his foreign affairs experience and what he would do. And what he's done domestically, I think we're all pretty thrilled about what he's done so far. But his foreign, you're dead on, because what we see here is he hasn't stopped Obama's troop buildup on the Russian border. The Russian sanctions are still on. His UN ambassador says Russia needs to give Crimea back to Ukraine. He's trying to pick a war with Iran. Sends Navy SEALs onto sovereign Yemeni soil. Wants safe zones in Syria without consulting its government. Tells China it has no right to be in the South China Sea. Proves he's morally corrupt because he endorses torture, and wants to confiscate the oil resources of Iraq when they never asked us there, and wants to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel. I mean, how many ways can you lead us into World War III?
Okay, you're accurate on some of those, but not all. Trump, when he was campaigning, talked about torture, but Matisse sat him down and said it really doesn't work, and so Trump has backed off on that. Trump is now describing the new embassy as not in Jerusalem, but to Jerusalem, which is a very subtle difference. And he was actually on TV just a little earlier saying it's actually way too soon to talk about a new embassy in Israel anyway. So he's backed off on that as well. But again, a lot of what we're hearing about Donald Trump is being spun and crafted, manipulated by corporate media. Trump is saying a lot of things I'm having a real problem with. But again, we need to keep in mind he is still in this period of time where he needs to win Senate confirmation for his cabinet and other appointees, and his nominees and Trump may be saying what they think the Senate wants to hear to get those confirmations. And once we're out of the confirmation, let's see if there's a change in Trump's agenda, and if there is, that bodes well. If it doesn't, then yeah, we're headed for a mess. If Trump continues on this same military-economic path that the nation has been on for the last 30 years, then Donald Trump could well be the last president of the United States.
Yeah, well, don't you find it odd that he hasn't backed down Obama's troop buildup, because he is commander-in-chief? Can't he do that?
He can do it, but he's meeting a lot of resistance from within the Pentagon. Remember, the Pentagon and the CIA have got his ear, and they're going to be filling his ear with whatever's in their best interest for Donald Trump to hear. And that is where that dangerous naivete becomes a major, major problem, because it was a problem also for Jimmy Carter.
Well, that's like the whole Yemeni thing, too. They said that was in planning during the Obama administration, but Trump, by being president when it happened, bloodied his hands.
Yeah, and I think that was the reason why the attack was leaked, was in order to slam Donald Trump for a failed mission in Yemen, which obviously it was sabotage from within. And again, that's happened before. Francis Gary Powers' U-2 was sabotaged to get it shot down. Carter's attempt at a rescue of the Iranian hostages was sabotaged as well. The insiders in Washington, D.C. love to play dirty. Trump had better wake up and realize that's how the game is played really, really quick. All right, we're going to let you go here and take a short break, and then we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the lines because I got some news I need to get to. Fran in Washington State, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha nui nui, Michael.
Aloha nui nui.
First, I have to apologize. I got something came across my desk about the Interior Department wanting to sell off 3.3 billion acres of native of government land, sell off, and it had a petition for the Sierra Club, and I've tried today to, look at it. I looked at bills in Congress, and I looked at the Sierra Club because there was a petition, and the number was only 261 or 262. I've looked them all up, and I sent you an email saying I'm alarmed, but I got kind of excited, and I didn't sign it. Sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about Trump, and I'm becoming increasingly concerned with the warmongering, and he, dear God, please let him not be another puppet of the deep state. I'm trying to keep the faith. I voted for him. I listened to you for all the time, and boy, I don't like the way this is going.
I don't either. But as I said, there's a couple of mitigating circumstances we have to take into consideration. And I'll be looking very closely at Trump once he's out of the confirmations. And then once he actually starts serious negotiations with Russia and China to see what he does. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And we're going to close the phone lines here. We need to remember something. Rhetoric is just rhetoric. And what he actually does is going to be the measure of the man. And I'm not trying to defend him or anything because I share everybody's concerns that this is not looking good at all. But again, given the confirmation process, given Donald Trump's own recommendations of how to initiate a negotiation from his book, The Art of the Deal, we may be seeing that happen. Got to give him his first 100 days to see what's going on. Now then, getting on back to the economic news, we know that Donald Trump is trying to bring jobs back into the United States, but it's really too small, and he's not able to stay ahead of the fact that some of America's biggest companies are slashing jobs at the fastest rate since the financial crisis. And ADP and BLS data is just showing that, yes, there's some hiring, but there's a lot more people being let go. Corporate media never mentions that. Oh, we've got all these new jobs here, and what they never mention is the jobs that disappear. Looks like Sears is on the brink of collapse. They had an absolutely terrible holiday shopping season. So did everybody, actually. Now, do you remember back in 1989, Michael Moore shot to fame with his documentary Roger and Me? That was a film critical of corporations who were sending jobs to Mexico. And what a reversal, because today Michael Moore is critical of Donald Trump for trying to bring those jobs back. It would be nice if he could make up his mind. But then liberals seem to not have much in the way of a continuity of opinion or perspective. They're just saying at the moment what they need to say. And I'll give you a good example. September of last year, Barack Obama was out there saying it's impossible to rig America's elections. It's too far flung. And then we get into November, and rather October, and Hillary's saying Russia's hacking our elections. November, Jill Stein says Russia's hacking our elections. And now you've got the NAACP saying, don't you dare look at how our elections are rigged, in response to Donald Trump's mounting an investigation into the election system. Eastern Outfitters, which includes discount retailer Bob's Stores and Eastern Mountain Sports, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, we're getting on back to the economic news. Beeb is this chain of stores for chic fashion, and they've kind of been in trouble since 2007, and now they're going to close 25 of their stores. Now, on Friday's show, I made a comment about Roosevelt's gold confiscation, and I made the comment, Roosevelt confiscated gold but not silver. Turns out I was wrong. I was corrected by a very alert listener who pointed out that after the gold confiscation, Roosevelt did in fact issue an order to seize certain categories of silver. Now, he allowed the American people to keep silver coinage and jewelry, but any of their bars and blocks were to be turned on in to save those poor, struggling, suffering bankers. Actually, Roosevelt's gold confiscation had the same loopholes. Heirloom jewelry and collectible coins were exempt from the seizures here. Now, over in Europe, things are getting even more and more tense. Apparently, there was this German park where two different groups of migrants literally got into a turf war, almost a tribal conflict between two subgroups of migrants, and they got into this huge, huge fight, clubbing each other with large pieces of wood. And apparently in Bad Homburg, Germany, Sunday night, there was a migrant center caught on fire, started by a resident. One of the migrants literally set fire to the building, and 83 people had to jump to safety. Now, residents of an apartment complex in Germany have taken upon themselves to build their own wall around their apartment complex. It's a 1 2/3 meter high fence around the building. And they're doing it because apparently a new refugee shelter is opening in the immediate vicinity, and they're hearing from all their friends and neighbors all over, relatives all over Germany, what will inevitably follow that. Latvia has completed 23 kilometers of their anti-migrant wall on the Russian border. And still we have Merkel and Soros and all these other globalists saying, oh, come on, these people have a natural right to come into your country. Actually, that's not true. And that's an important point to keep in mind. Nobody has a natural right to come to the United States of America. It's a privilege. And if you wish to come to the United States of America, there is a legal process that you must follow. And if you go through that process and get a green card to become a citizen, welcome, hope you like it. Actually, I have a feeling a lot of them are going to be disappointed because the United States today is not what you see in TV shows and movies around the world. It just isn't. Now, apparently over in Swindon, Great Britain, they have a huge problem where the migrants include a large number of prostitutes, mostly women from Poland and Romania, and they're linked to criminal gangs who traffic these women. And apparently they're dealing with a crisis called a pop-up brothel. And what that is the criminal gangs will open up a rental property. They'll rent a property that becomes a pop-up brothel, and they will have the women working in there for a few weeks until the police start noticing, and then they'll get out of there and find another place. That's what a pop-up brothel is. So, now over in Sweden, there's a police officer, Peter Springer, and he went on a rant on Facebook, and he said he didn't care if it was not politically correct because he's about to retire anyway, and so he can tell the truth. They're not going to, they can't fire him. He's retiring at this point. And he's saying that, yes, the migrants are to blame for the most serious crimes in Sweden. And he's saying that there are more than 50 areas labeled as no-go zones where the police don't even go in anymore. And these are, whoops, we just had the power dip. We're under a big storm out here in Hawaii. All right, so the crimes are children carrying weapons, sex attacks, violent crimes. And as I said before, the process of migration is a filtering system. And the filtering system is you're not getting the best representatives of those source countries. You're not getting the best representatives of Syria or Libya or Africa. You are getting the people who can't make it in their home countries. You're getting people who are carrying contagious diseases. You are getting people who are fleeing prosecution. Same thing with the illegal immigration here in the United States. The people coming across that border from Mexico are the ones who couldn't make it in their home country. And they're flocking to the United States hoping to get free stuff. Now, as you know, somebody is writing the checks for all these lawsuits against Trump's travel ban. A lot of people think it may be George Soros. The ACLU, apparently just in the last week, received 6 times their normal annual donations to fund all of this. And that judge in Seattle, who's known to be an activist judge, very pro-immigrant, pro-migrant, flies right in the face of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which was enacted back in 1952, and it states quite clearly the President has the legal authority to deny certain categories of immigrants coming into this country on grounds of national security. The law favors Donald Trump. This judge in Seattle ought to be thrown off the bench for being in violation of Title VIII. Now, the EU is thrashing around, and as if the economy and refugees weren't enough, there's a major epidemic of corruption through the EU itself, and there's an article here where in Sputnik News, corruption runs rampant in Bulgaria and Romania after 10 years of EU membership. And it's out of control over there. It's absolutely out of control. Somebody ran a study saying 85% of the world's population is living under corrupt government. I think it's probably closer to 100%. Let's be honest here. Now, story coming out of Russia today. Davos man is dead. That was a referral to our previous ambassador to the European Union, who was all pro-globalist and everything. Ted Malloch is now nominated to be Trump's pick for ambassador to the European Union. And interestingly enough, the EU Parliament is trying to veto his appointment. This is the European Union saying we veto the ambassador Donald Trump wants to send to us because he's not on board with the New World Order. And apparently the EU seems to have missed the memo. Donald Trump won the American election. And ambassadors for every country are chosen by their leaders to represent those countries, not George Soros' master plan. And the EU doesn't like that. The EU wanted an ambassador who's going to work with them for their grand plan of a new world order. Now, here's where it's going to get very, very interesting. You remember back in 2015, they had the Paris conference for human-caused global warming, and they were dealing with a major blizzard at the time. And the Paris Climate Treaty was moved along by a report issued by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which said there had not, in fact, been a pause in global warming. It was still continuing. It was at a crisis moment. Well, apparently a high-level whistleblower from within NOAA has now come forward saying it was a hoax. NOAA manipulated the data to come up with a desired result to try and scare people to go along with the human-caused global warming agenda, carbon credits, carbon taxes. globalist control of your standard of living. And apparently because of this fraud, world leaders were duped into investing billions of dollars all on the basis of this manipulated data. It wasn't science, it was propaganda. Now, over at realclimatescience.com, they're looking at some of the charts from NOAA and NASA about global warming. And they looked at the chart and they said, you know, there's a problem here because NOAA doesn't actually have surface temperature data from much of the areas filled in with bright red. They don't have a global network. And remember, the NOAA 16 satellite malfunctioned. It was out of calibration. It was 10 degrees too high. And NOAA's had to remove the data, but the carbon Nazis still cite it. But they're just making it up. They're using the name of NASA and NOAA and just saying, see, it's NASA and NOAA, you got to believe us. Well, I worked for NASA, and those of us on the inside always said that NASA stands for never a straight answer. I have to come up with something similar for NOAA. These agencies are filled with political leadership. I remember when NASA went to the new NASA, where the scientists and engineers were taken out of those management spots, and those management spots were filled with political appointees pushing agendas and MBAs who were looking at their Gantt charts and their PERT charts and had no clue what it was they were trying to manage, which led to an era of epic disasters, including Challenger. One of the worst lies that is out there is that politics can override science. It's never been true, never will be true. Go back and look at the episode with Lysenkoism in the former Soviet Union if you want a reminder of how bad reality can bite back on a political agenda. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there was a scientist named Lysenko who claimed to be a botanist. He was a favorite of Joseph Stalin, and he claimed that if you were to force wheat to grow early with a technique that farmers have used before freezing the seeds, that trait would be passed on to the next generation of wheat, and it would spring early all by itself. And Stalin said, oh yes, this makes us look good. And of course it turned out to be a disaster, triggered massive famines. That's what led to the Soviet Union having to buy grain from the United States of America. Getting on back to human-caused global warming. Oman is getting snow. They have had temperatures plummeting over there. Oman is now getting snow. California is now buried under the most snow it's seen in the last 22 years. And apparently some of the snowfall is over 20 feet tall at certain parts throughout the state. And of course, this is good for California, which has been suffering the drought, because now the state's snowpack is over 170% of its average snowpack for this time of year. So they're getting a lot of snow, and that means they're going to have some water, offset some of the aquifers that are contaminated with fracking fluid. Story coming out of Alpenhorn News talking about the heavy snow there. And they're saying that the lower mountain elevations in Southern California got 12 to 48 inches of snow. The slopes of Big Bear got 70 inches of snow. They could see the ski season run all the way into the middle of summer with that much snow. Downside, when it all melts, there's going to be some flooding issues downstream. Hundreds remain without power on Vancouver Island following their heavy snowfall. And snow is something that Vancouver tends not to see because of what's called the Pineapple Express. And that is normal air currents here in the Pacific tend to bring warm air from here in the Hawaiian Islands up to that northwestern coast of the United States in Vancouver Island. So their normal behavior is they get just a little snow. Just a little tiny bit of snow. But now they're getting heavy snow, and it's snapping power lines all over the place. Seattle and Portland areas are going to get more snow as the winter storm parade returns. Out there. Now here's a weird story. This is from governmentslaves.info. Apparently, the left-wing media is very angry that cartoons are not being used to indoctrinate 5-year-olds about human-caused global warming. Remember what I said about beliefs being chains that hold free minds slaves? And those beliefs have to be indoctrinated into you when you're too young to understand the big people can lie. That's what they're doing here. That's what Sunday school does. That's what social studies do in those early grades. And now they want to have human-caused global warming as part of that belief structure starting at 5 years old. Now, if I were fortunate enough to have a kid, I wouldn't let them watch cartoons anyway. And frankly, having been an animator, I look at what's out there for contemporary cartoons, and the quality of work is just terrible. See, I grew up with, Chuck Jones and Warner Brothers and the early Hanna-Barbera stuff, and that was quality work intended for theatrical release. And today, it's just, it's horrible quality animation. I don't even look at the stories anymore. But if you're going to do it right. Now then. We're going to talk a little bit about computers. We're going to open the phone lines, by the way, if there's something that you want to share with us. And there has been a lot of talk about Amazon's Echo. And it goes by the name of Alexa. And it's been causing some problems. Because if you have somebody in your house who's named Alexa or Alex or Alexander, the Amazon Echo will wake up, and it will listen to what you're talking about, and a lot of people are discovering that they have inadvertently ordered things from Amazon they had no desire or intention to do, and it's caused a big negative backlash. Well, Amazon is getting ready to change that, and when we come back from these words from our sponsors, I'll give you a little insight on that. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the Amazon Echo, which if you have somebody in your home named Alexa, Alex, Alexander, or if you're watching a TV show where the name Alex, Alexander, Alexa is used, Alexa will wake up, listen to the conversation around it, and possibly order stuff. And it has happened. And it's caused a huge problem. Well, apparently Amazon is immediately implementing a way where you can change the wake-up word to something else that is not likely to be said. And I actually saw this announcement in the context of Star Trek fans on how you could change the wake-up word to computer, which would be computer, and it comes on. I'm not even sure that's a good word because that's a word that gets used a lot on TV shows and in your private life. But it's nice that they could come up with something where you can create a word for the Amazon Echo that will be truly unique to that system. So they're working to solve that problem. Now, once again, the Democrats have been hacked. Members of the House Intelligence Foreign Affairs Committee have had their computers broken into. Gee, I wonder who would do that. And as it turns out, 3 brothers who worked inside the Congressional IT Department have now been fired for going into these congressional computer networks without authorization. Nobody's saying what it was they were trying to do in there. But we certainly know there are a lot of people who would like to know what the House Intelligence Committee is planning under the Trump administration. Now, remember last week there was this story where Trump had fired apparently some top members of the Secret Service protective detail. The White House is now saying that's another example of fake news coming out of the corporate media. And somebody was rushing to make a deadline. They went with the story. They didn't fact-check it, and they went on out there. And this is not just a problem for the corporate media. This is a problem for us in the independent media who are downstream from those corporate media reports. And if they're making all these mistakes, it's making it even more difficult for us to carry out any kind of a realistic analysis about what's going on. So, again, we're trying to find the facts We need to go to multiple sources. We need to confirm everything before we post it. We have to be more professional than professionals who are demonstrating a very high degree of unprofessional behavior and ethics in this media war on the President of the United States of America. Now, U.S. CERT last week issued a security advisory that there is a memory corruption bug that can be exploited to literally crash your Windows machine, take it all the way down to the BSOD. And it can be loaded through a malicious website. And apparently, Microsoft was kind of just dragging their feet on getting this one fixed. And so finally, the security company published the exploits. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to the computer news here, apparently an upgrade to the Sophos system basically wrecked the system at the London National Health System Trust. And they were trying to keep a lid on it, but it's leaked on out. And it's causing major havoc. Now, part of the issue has to do with a big problem with a lot of anti-malware, antivirus systems. And it's a problem with what are called false positives. Now, the ideal when you have an antivirus system is it scans your system, it finds the viruses, it gets rid of them. But because the malware writers are trying to conceal what they're doing, very often their malware will look very similar to a legitimate part of the system. And so when the signature gets added to the antivirus list of profiles to search for, it can accidentally tag a legitimate, honest part of the operating system or application and identify it. So if you're one of these people who's got antivirus, you need to look very carefully at what it's telling you is an antivirus. It's telling you is malware and infection, because apparently this system went on in, wrongfully identified core Windows system components as malign, and locked them away in quarantine. Now, personally, I'm not a violent person. I don't normally believe in the death penalty, but I really think, given that the National Security Agency is just sitting around there amusing themselves with stolen naked pictures, that we need to catch just one of these cyber criminals and crucify them live on a live streaming video accessible on a web browser anywhere on Earth. If they're reasonably healthy, it'll take them at least a week to die, and we'll just televise it all over for everybody to watch and learn from, and I'll bet you 90% of this nonsense would go away. Now, as far as Sophos itself is concerned, it almost seems like the actual quality of software being produced is in decline. Products are being shipped before they're fully tested, and a big reason for that goes all the way back to the early days of computers, where Apple was just starting up, IBM PC was just starting up, Commodore is just starting up, and I still have my my VIC-20, and it still works too. And they all went and they lobbied the U.S. government saying, we're a brand new startup industry, we have a huge potential, but we need to be protected because there are a lot of mistakes and problems out there. We need to be protected from product liability while we get our feet on the ground. And Congress went along and said, okay, we're going to protect you. And that was all well and good when the computers were still Apple IIs, IBM PCs, Commodore, TRS-80, Texas Instruments, and whatever. There was a whole menagerie. The Osborne. Remember the Osborne. But computers today are a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. And they really don't need to be protected. But they still are. And because of that, they are not motivated to make sure their products are working properly before they go out the door. It's almost a running joke that every new Windows operating system is shipped with anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 known problems that they'll get around to fixing eventually. because nothing bad happens to them for selling products that are not 100% perfect. And the rationale is hard to understand. If you own a business and you buy a delivery van, and because of a design defect, the delivery van crashes and you suffer economic harm, you can sue the manufacturer of the van. But if you buy a computerized accounting system for that same business, and because of a design flaw, that accounting system crashes, wipes out all your data, and you suffer financial harm, you cannot sue the software company. It's in that end-user license agreement. Obviously, the manufacturer of the van is going to be working hard to produce a quality product. The software company isn't. They're going to be looking for the next whiz-bang that gets you to buy the new, updated system. And that's been a real problem. And that's why so much software that's out there is just full of bugs and crashes and poor documentation. And it can be very frustrating and angering for those of us who remember a golden age when the stuff pretty much tended to work as the manual said it was going to work. It's time to remove product liability from computers. It's time to restore product liability to computers and software. For the same reason, it's time to restore product liability to vaccinations. The reason vaccines are so out of control is because you can't sue them. The Department of Homeland Security made it impossible to sue vaccine makers. If you have a claim against a vaccine for damage, you have to go to the vaccine court. And the vaccine court, citing that now discredited CDC report saying there's no link between autism and vaccines, will deny payments to people. It's a wonderful system for the vaccine makers. And it's really, really crooked. All right, we're going to take a break to do a shout-out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Getting on back to the computers, apparently over at Denuvo, which are leaders in the field of video game production, somebody actually was able to break into their website, which was not being as carefully looked after as the games. And apparently the company left some of the directories and files open to the public, and they're now in the middle of a huge data breach. And that might include some of their proprietary software, which is now going to vanish into the ether. Remember how Bev Harris found the GEM software that Diebold was using to steal elections? She found an open FTP site, no security at all, and downloaded it all. And Diebold tried to come on back and say, she stole the software. No, it was just there on a public server. Anybody could look at it. Now, apparently a group of hackers has just taken down a fifth of the dark web. Now, if you don't know what the dark web is, the dark web is a network of servers that are only reachable through the Tor browser and only by their IP number. They do not have domain names. They do not show up on DNS. You cannot see the dark web through your traditional browser such as Firefox or Chrome. And the dark web is an area where a lot of nefarious activity goes on. Buying and selling of drugs, trafficking in illegal arms. And according to this hacking group, apparently half the websites in the portion of the darknet they took down were hosting child pornography, which is apparently a big, big problem out there. And I still don't understand that. Now then, the other day I was talking about credit cards with built-in RFID chips. And I was expressing the fact that I didn't want to use those because a few Christmases ago, Claire, just going through the shopping mall, had her credit card details stolen by somebody with a backpack and a laptop and equipment that apparently you can buy off of eBay for like $20-30. And just walk around snarfing up all the credit card details. And remember, in the good old days when they were trying to get you to use the cards, the credit card company and the bank would pay the cost of fraud. Those days are gone. If you get ripped off through your credit card, you are on the hook for those losses. Okay? But the credit card companies were pushing these radio ID cards. We had one of our credit card companies that said, we are canceling your former card, you will use this new card. Now, supposedly, this new card with the radio chip was supposed to improve security. And apparently, a study released this week from Javelin Strategy and Research found that identity fraud cases involving credit cards actually went up 16% in 2016. That equates to 14.5 million new victims, a record high. And what went wrong was somebody early on made the decision not to require a personal identification number when using these cards. You were just going to swipe, and that was going to be the end of it. And apparently the original system was, hold the card near the radio receiver, then type in your PIN, and you would be there. But if you're not being required to use the PIN, then anybody who can read the radio chip or even just get their hands on the physical card can empty it. I think we ought to go back to a cash and carry society. I want us to go back to that silver and gold coin or paper ticket claim check. It worked really well. I think we've gone way too far down this plastic path, and now the banks are trying to make it mandatory with their war on cash. It's working out really well over in India, I might add. Now, getting on back to vaccines and the growing awareness that vaccines may not be all that effective, in many cases are actually harmful. There's a story out of Activist Post where they're talking about this new study that was done to analyze the purity of common vaccines. And these are vaccines that have all been declared perfectly safe by the CDC and the FDA. And remember, with the CDC, it owns more than 20 patents on vaccines. It earns $4.5 billion every year selling those vaccines. They're not objective and impartial in this discussion, which is why we got that report from the CDC that there's no link between vaccines and autism, which was then revealed to be a fraud by a whistleblower. But this new investigation went on in and just actually said, what is in here? And they found these micro and nano-sized particulate matter composed of inorganic elements in vaccine samples. None of these materials were declared among the components and ingredients. And they shouldn't be there. There's no reason for them to be there. And these contaminants have already been verified by other research, and they're non-biodegradable and non-biocompatible. It's really not a joke. They just go on out to the warehouse, grab whatever they can, pour it into the bottle, and say, here, you will take this. The state hath decreed it so. Now, out here in Hawaii, there is a growing problem. We are seeing more dead whales wash up on our beaches. And apparently it's not confined just to Hawaii. It's all over the Pacific Ocean. These very sick and starving animals. The possibility is being raised that it may have something to do with Fukushima. And because there isn't a growth in the whale population that would account for an increase in deceased whales. And KGMB was reporting we've had 6 humpback whales wash up onto Hawaii shores since November. That's double the number typically found in an entire season that normally runs from November to May. So that is looking really, really ugly out there. And the Fukushima angle cannot be ignored any longer. Now, of course, the corporate media is going to tell you that anybody who's worried about radiation from Fukushima, they're a tinfoil hat, kook, wingnut, conspiracy theorist. But there's something you need to remember. Those reactors at Fukushima were all designed by General Electric 2 of them were built by General Electric. The other 2 were built by TEPCO from General Electric's plant. General Electric has some 20 of that same model reactor here in the United States of America. And General Electric owns a large chunk of the corporate media. Now, I'm getting a lot of emails from people in Japan who are very concerned about what's going on. The radiation at the area is at 530 sieverts per hour. That is just below the level of literally guaranteed lethality. But we're all being told nothing to worry about. It's going to be fine. Nothing to worry about. What you ought to do, go over to Google Earth and do a search for Fukushima Daiichi, and it will take you over to those ruined reactors. Then zoom out a little bit and take a look at the area around the remains of the power station. You're going to see all these cylindrical drums and these square boxes, and they are everywhere. These are holding radioactive waste that is considered too dangerous to dump back in the ocean. And by the way, they are allowing some of the radioactive waste to go into the ocean. So this morning I dusted off my old radiation meter. Remember, after Fukushima happened, I was doing a daily radiation count. And I stopped doing it when we got back down to the baseline count for this part of Oahu. Because remember, we're all living on an extinct volcano, and lava is itself slightly radioactive. So you've got to take that baseline out. And I turned this on, and we're getting levels that are right back up to the worst that we saw following the Fukushima meltdown. So there is something going on out there. But you're a conspiracy theorist if you think about it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know what they can do about it. If they're accurate, they're concerned that part of one of these reactor structures is going to literally fall into the ocean with all of its contamination. They're now admitting some of this melted reactor core is down below the water table. What a mess. Now, there are 2 aspects to this that we need to remember. First of all, the safety decisions for all those power stations along the coast of Japan were decided by the money junkies who wanted to save money. We don't need this, we don't need that. The tsunami wall only has to be this tall. There was one exception from which we should learn an important lesson. The nuclear power station at Onagawa, the design engineer who supervised the construction of that, fought a one-man war for the best possible security systems. A very high tsunami wall, emergency generators up on pylons. He went on around and he looked at the geological evidence of tsunamis in the past, and he said, we're going to build above this. And he literally fought tooth and nail. We're going to make a safe nuclear plant, and he did. Onagawa was the only nuclear power plant on that coast that suffered no damage at all from the quake and tsunami. Sadly, he had passed away, so he didn't live to see the vindication of his design choices. All the others had cutbacks on their safety features. We don't need the tsunami wall that high. We don't need to put the generators up on towers. And that was one of the big problems. There may be another one, and I would like to find a way to find out once and for all what's going on here. We know that the Stuxnet computer virus that was created by Israel and the United States to wreck Iran's nuclear infrastructure was programmed to interfere with a standard Siemens digital controller. The same exact model controllers were in use at the Fukushima power station, and Stuxnet was known to be in computers around the power station at the time of the quake and tsunami. It's also known that when the disaster hit, several of the safety systems at Fukushima failed to operate as they were supposed to. I would like to know if Stuxnet had infected Fukushima and turned the disaster into a catastrophe. Because that is a very, very heavy price for the Japanese and for everybody living around the Pacific to pay for Israel's desire to mess around with Iran. I'd like to find that out at some point. We need to know. Okay, now then, here's a really good story and this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot myself. There's a Portland high school student who has solved one of the world's major problems regarding resources. We're going to take a break for some commercials. We'll be right back with this story. Do call into the show, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I'm going to finish this story. We had a caller waiting, but I want to finish this story. This high school student up in Portland came up with an absolutely brilliant way of dealing with desalinization. Now, as you know, there's lots and lots of water on planet Earth, but most of it is salty, and it cannot be used. And there have been all these projects to try and remove the salt from the salt water, and this kid, Chai, just said only 10% of the water is bonded to the salt. Why work at trying to break that? Let's just find a way to get rid of that water that's linked to the salt, and that'll leave the other 90% clear. And he's just come up with this very simple polymer that you mix in with salt water, and it simply precipitates out to the bottom with all the salt, and what's left is fresh water. And he's gotten all of these prizes, and everybody's starting to look at this because it's much cheaper than the current desalinization technology, which is all about breaking that water-salt bond. And his idea is absolutely inspired. Just forget about that water that's bonded to the salt. Get rid of it. What's left behind is what you want. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Ron in Missouri. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. You were just talking about chips and credit cards.
Yes.
I saw on a couple of sites where you could actually punch out that chip and a magnetic strip on the back would still work. Do you have any knowledge about that?
Yeah, that absolutely will work. And a lot of people are saying you can take that igniter from a cigarette lighter that creates the electric spark, not the flint wheel, obviously. You can use that to burn the chip out so that you'll wave the card. It doesn't work. I'll slide it through the slider. But it really should be up to us to decide, because this is another classic case of somebody came up with an idea that they thought was going to be really good, and then somebody else says, people aren't going to want to bother with a pin, and because of it, we were left even more wide open to fraud than we were before. And sometimes you almost get the feeling we're intentionally being set up to be defrauded by all these computer hackers.
Now, you said a spark from a cigarette lighter?
Yeah, you know, the cigarette lighter, when you push the button, it generates a little blue-white spark. That spark is actually thousands of volts.
Okay. I'll give that a shot, see what happens.
All right. And thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jesse in Ohio. Aloha, Jesse. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I've been talking to people about immigration, and I think I figured something out. All right. First off, you've got one group of people that are always talking about immigrants being a drain on society and how they're signing up for welfare and all of that. And then we've got the other group talking about how, like, labor companies, roofers, drywallers, construction companies are hiring immigrants and not hiring American people.
Yes.
I think I figured out a new concept here. We'll call it Schrodinger's immigrants, where they're simultaneously stealing your job while being too lazy to work.
Well, that's a nice bit of humor, but the reality is, to some extent, both are true. We had that story we ran last week about the overwhelming number of migrants, illegal immigrants, who are living on food stamps and various other forms of assistance. And yes, some of them are trying to go on out and work to get a little extra money. And you'll see them in front of the home improvement centers. But it is, in fact, illegal to be hiring undocumented workers or illegal immigrants or whatever you want to call them. And, with reference to that earlier caller about needing to build up our population to restart that Ponzi scheme central bank, that would work if we had employment for all these people. But we don't even have enough employment for the legal American citizens, and that's why that's going to fail.
What kind of jobs, like, let's say, to support something like that, how would we even begin if we've got that many people out of work? Where do all those jobs come from, even if we start making stuff?
We need to start making stuff. We need to pull back our jobs from overseas. We need to sort of fall out of this love affair with automation because your employees collectively are also your customers. And if you're not hiring, then don't be surprised when people don't come into your store to buy what it is you're selling. Anyway, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm looking on the corporate media, and they're still going on about the controversies of the Super Bowl commercials. And apparently Audi's commercial is at the forefront of that, and Anheuser-Busch's ad. And to be honest, the Anheuser-Busch ad was in production long before Trump's travel ban, and everybody's trying to just cash in on it. And I'm looking at all this brouhaha. Like there isn't any real news going on in the world here. We're going to talk about those commercials over and over and over again. And I was watching it, and I flashed back on this Sylvester Stallone movie called Demolition Man, where he's framed for a crime. He's frozen. He is woken up in the future, and part of the future is commercials are the popular entertainment. When you're watching TV and you're listening to radio, it's always commercials, nothing else. There may actually be some merit to that. I'm going to share a little insight with you from my days in advertising. TV commercials are actually the best production values out there, with the possible exception of Westworld that I'm totally in love with. And that is because you're going to spend a lot more money per second of runtime for a commercial than you do for the TV show that surrounds it, because getting that commercial to you is the point. And very often it is possible for a 30-second TV commercial to cost more to produce than the 30-minute TV show that surrounds it. And from a purely filmmaking point of view, there's a lot of good work out there. A lot of good directors began with commercials. So there is that aspect of it. And yes, commercials can be political as well as mercantile. But they're still going on and on about it. Now, again, back when I worked in advertising, getting your commercial on the Super Bowl, that was it. That was, oh, wow, you're at the top of your game if your work is on the Super Bowl. And I did manage to have that a few times, and that was always a big rush. Usually we wind up winning a Clio Award for it afterwards here. I'll tell you the other thing, and I'm going to be very honest. I didn't actually watch the Super Bowl. I went in and I looked at the commercials on YouTube, and I did look at Lady Gaga's halftime show, and I thought that trick they did with the drones was really, really cool. I thought that part of it was really cool. No wardrobe malfunctions, no controversy over there. And, of course, that wire drop, that was also pretty impressive. But she's done some really, really wild things. Remember when she did the dress that was made out of sliced meat, and PETA just went totally ballistic on it. And everybody said, what did you do with it? I mean, it's obviously you can't keep it. And she says, I jerked it. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Ralph in New York City, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How you doing? I want to ask you a hypothetical question. How do you see the future and based on law enforcement versus private security? Do you see a downfall in law enforcement in the future due to the fact private security is taking over? Do you see a future in that?
Well, obviously, corporations want to privatize every function of government to maximize profitability, and privatization has always been a disaster for ordinary taxpayers and a blessing for the corporations who are making more money. And a good example of that would be the privatized prisons, the prison industrial complex, where they've turned prisons, instead of places of rehabilitation, they're just slave labor factories. And that's why the recidivism rate is as high as it is in this country.
And another hypothetical question. There's a crisis right now in nightlife. There was a big article in the New York Daily News about hiring security bouncers in nightclubs and bars. There's a big shortage in this type of line of work all over New York, even in major cities. They're having problems hiring quality doormen and bouncers in nightclubs, and And a lot of the guys, a lot of the work retire in that game and it's having problems. There's a crisis on there, they were saying. What are your opinion on that?
Well, who wants to be a doorman? Who wants to be a security guard? They're not exactly glamour positions. They don't pay very well.
Exactly.
When I was in college, I actually did one semester working as a security guard because I needed to work at night. My daytime schedule was full. And I wound up, I was working for Wackenhut, and I was guarding an absolutely empty building, only because my pay was a lot less than the insurance premiums for an unguarded building. And so I had this huge empty building to work with, and I was in my film class, and I literally got permission from my management to set up my effects stage in this building. So I had this giant space, and I did this science fiction film called Space 1999, marked down from 2001, and I had traveling mats and miniatures and just all kinds of stuff. And I got an A on the film project and utterly demoralized everybody else in that class. So that was a little bit of fun.
Yeah, but do you see also, what do you think about the Secret Service, so to speak? They're having a problem recruiting future Secret Service agents also. There's a big major crisis in that also. They talked about that also.
Well, I understand.
Like high-profile people.
I'm hearing that some of the Secret Service, not the top managers, that was false news, but there are people in the Secret Service who are being asked to step down because they're holdovers from Obama, and I think Trump needs to Trumpify the White House as quickly as he can. The Secret Service may be a victim of its own reputation. To be very honest, when they were checking Claire and I out during one of Obama's Christmas visits here a few years back, 4 years back I think it was now, I was honestly not impressed with them. The guy who was trying to be covert wasn't very covert. The one who was nosing around our condo made the mistake of letting us see him. So I'm not surprised Trump has got his own security working inside the Secret Service protective detail.
Exactly. Wow. But I'm just saying, even in federal protection, there was a big issue that they need the rich and the high profile, the rich need security, and they're saying there's a major crisis for the next generation, which is and there's going to be a problem because the old cats are retiring, and they're having a problem recruiting future ones.
Well, I think the problem can be, again, I don't know what Secret Service agents are being paid, and it may not be very much. They may be trying to sell it on the honor of being on the protective detail, but that does wear out after a while. I remember some years ago, before Disney closed down their traditional animation department, they were having a problem getting people because they were paying a lot less than the other animation studios, and they kept saying, but it's Disney, it's going to be on your resume, you'll be great. And after a while, people said the Disney cachet just isn't what it used to be, and that may be happening. That may be what's happening with the Secret Service. When we were kids, the Secret Service was like this ultimate thing, and today it doesn't have the same cachet. And I'm talking about the protective detail, not the anti-counterfeiting part, which is the majority work of the Secret Service.
Because a lot of the guys that come out of the military, they're figuring working for Blackwater will be a better issue than working for the government.
They're going to get a lot more money from Blackwater or XZ or whatever he's calling himself this week.
So that's going to be a better solution than work for a private corporation and working for the government itself, right?
Yeah, the private sector, well, it's kind of iffy. As a general rule of thumb, government workers are making 1.5 times what ordinary citizens do for the same job. But when you come into areas like security, private security like Blackwater, they pay very, very generously because these people are being hired to go on out and, if necessary, fight wars. So they're paid very, very generously indeed. When they were privatizing the Iraq War, when they were hiring private truck drivers to drive the trucks in order to free up uniformed soldiers for the front lines, those truck drivers were making huge amounts of money. Of course, you carried with it the risk that you were going to be, shot at some point.
Wow. Oh, all right. Thanks for telling me, Mike. Thanks for the answer on that one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. We're going to let you go here. Coming up here toward the end of the show, now Fox News just ran a headline. Israel's Knesset has passed that law retroactively legalizing all of the illegal settlements on stolen West Bank lands. And I imagine they did that right now because everybody's saying, Gaza's shooting at the Israelis. There are swastikas on the subway cars. Poor Israel, poor Israel. Of course it's okay for them to steal the Palestinians' land. It's become a repeating pattern over and over and over again. Now then, I want to share a couple of stories about here in Hawaii. And one of them has to do with this place out on Kauai called the Cocoa Palms. Now, if you are an Elvis Presley fan, you probably remember his movie Blue Hawaii. And the Cocoa Palms was one of the locations used for it. It made the Cocoa Palms world famous literally overnight. It was the inspiration for this tropical tiki kitsch that was copied by places like Disney's Tiki Room and another place I worked at as a magician when I was a kid, the Tiki's in Monterey Park, which is no longer there. Here's a little side note a lot of people don't know. When Elvis was here in Hawaii filming Blue Hawaii, he threw a concert as a fundraiser for the Arizona Memorial. It's part of the history of the Arizona Memorial. A lot of people don't know is that Elvis threw a concert and raised most of the money for it himself, which was a very, very generous thing for him to do. So my first marriage, I was married on the grounds of the Cocoa Palms, and it's a beautiful place. I made a video about a recent visit there, which I should have put up on What Really Happened, and I will as soon as the show is over. But we are now getting word that somebody has finally come up with enough money to rebuild the Cocoa Palms, hopefully back to its original glory. And it was pretty much destroyed by Hurricane Iniki, and it just sat there and rotted and rotted. And now they've got the permits. They're demolishing it all down except for the lava stone rock walls, which would be very difficult to get out there. And they're going to rebuild a new Cocoa Palms over it, which, for those of us with fond memories of the place, is a really, really good thing. And they're hoping it'll be ready by the end of next year. And I've already told Claire, if we're still here by the end of next year, I'll definitely take her on over. And the Cocoa Palms was famous for the golden coconut. It was a drink, very potent, and it came in a ceramic gold coconut, which I kept through the years, and I donated back to the museum that they're going to have on the grounds of the new restored Cocoa Palms. Now then, also here in Hawaii, we mentioned a few weeks ago that on the Big Island, a large section of what is called the lava bench cracked off at Kaahumanu. And as a result, a lava tube opened up, and the lava is just pouring out of it into the ocean. And because that section of the coastline is almost a vertical drop, it's not building up a new bench, and it looks like this is going to continue doing what it's doing for quite some time. There has been a noticeable increase in seismic activity along what is called the Southern Rift Zone. Kilauea itself, the lava lake at the bottom of it, seems to be bumping up and down a lot. And we're actually starting to get more quakes up toward this part of the archipelago around Maui and everything. So Madam Pelly is definitely getting fidgety, I guess would be a good word for it. Be a good word for fidgety. But if you are coming to Hawaii, it looks like that spouting lava is going to be visible for quite some time. I would strongly recommend seeing it from a boat or a helicopter. And again, and I've said this before, I'm going to keep on saying it. If you come to Hawaii and you go down to the Big Island to visit the volcanoes, yes, it's a national park. That does not alter the fact you are standing on an active volcano. And you would be well advised to be listening to those park rangers and paying attention to those little sawhorses with the ropes and the signs saying, "Don't go beyond here." They are not there for decoration. And every year we'll lose about a dozen tourists, sometimes before they can spend all their money, who will think they're just going to step over to the other side of the rope because it looks like it's solid, get a selfie with the lava, and that will be it. But unfortunately, what they're stepping onto is a thin shell of recently cooled glass, and they punch right on through into the lava, and that is it. If you're going to visit the volcanoes, you want to take a lot of water with you. You want to have closed shoes because you're basically walking on broken glass. And if you are coming to Hawaii, yes, it's billed as a tropical paradise, but we still have the same realities of any urban area, this crime here. And it is rather heartbreaking to see people who will come out here and figure they can put down their natural defenses that they would have around them at home, and you can't do that. You really, really can't. But it is an amazing, amazing place if you are into volcanology. If you're into any other kind of geology, it's pretty darn boring. Pretty darn boring here. All right. Here's another little story that's coming on out. And before you start saying Jurassic Park, that's not what they're talking about here. There is a new scientific process that's been developed to allow for the complete recovery of DNA from animals that have been stored in formaldehyde or alcohol, because those chemicals will destroy the DNA, which makes sequencing these animals, many of whom are now extinct, impossible. But apparently with this new method, scientists are able to extract and sequence the DNA from these preserved animals. And one of them was a Gunther's mountain snake from India, which had never been sequenced before. So they're all very excited they're getting these DNA sequences. Now, that being said, first of all, let me qualify this by saying I loved the movie Jurassic Park. I love living on the island where much of it was filmed. But it's based on a flawed scientific premise, which they kind of sort of acknowledge in the later movies in the franchise, which is you can't create an extinct animal only from its DNA, because the process of gestation involves a lot more than just the DNA. It involves a lot of hormones and enzymes provided by the mother or the egg in the correct sequence. And if you don't have those, and you just substitute in something else, what you get may look like an extinct animal, but it won't be exact, and it won't be something you could base science on. We've got to take a break for some commercials. Back with our last segment of the show today after these few words. Aloha, welcome back to our show here. And by the way, did you know out in California, La La Land, where they have all these strict gun laws and you shall not do this and you shall not do that, did you know that the California Senate voted almost unanimously to exempt itself from all gun laws out there in California? They really did do that. Another case of do as we say, don't do as we do. You look at some of these staunchest opponents to the Second Amendment, and you find out they're carrying concealed. Like Dianne Feinstein hates guns in the hands of citizens. She's got one, because I'm above the citizens here. Let's see. Big fight in the Senate over Betsy DeVos. It looks like it's a tie vote, so Vice President Pence actually gets to do his duty as President of the Senate and cast the tie-breaking vote here. Now, we're getting word that Vizio has just settled a lawsuit, and it seems what they were doing is their TV sets were actually reporting on your viewing habits, and Vizio was turning around and selling that information to marketing companies. And I'm not surprised. The technology is certainly there. And I can imagine some of the cable TV companies are doing the same, but it's not exactly on the up and up. Now, for some people, they're not going to care. I actually don't care myself, personally. I'm not watching anything on TV. I don't care if anybody knows about it. But there are other people to whom privacy is very, very important. And mostly, I'm in that category. I don't want anybody to know that I stopped on my way home from work and got a jelly donut in defiance of my diet. It's nobody's business but me and the baker. And I understand that this kind of tracking can actually smooth out the process of commerce, but I think everybody ought to have the option of switching it off. Basically, a leave me alone switch. I don't want to be approached by marketers based on what TV shows I'm watching. I'm watching war movies. I don't want to buy an F-16. And sometimes I don't think that software is as good as they say. I'll do a lot of web searches in the research for the radio show and WhatReallyHappened.com, and immediately I'll get flooded with ads for things I would have no intention of ever buying. But that's what the software says. Oh, he was looking at a website about outboard motors. We're going to sell him an outboard motor. No, you're not. Just doing research. So having a little leave me alone switch I think would be a good idea. It would make my life simpler. And given that you're not going to sell me an outboard motor, why would you care if I have a leave me alone switch or not? Anyway, we're coming up here. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here. I got to do Jim Goddard's show. We'll be back here tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, stay warm. A lot of snow out there this week. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.